Okay, are you recording now? Okay. Number 1, explain your profession. Name of company, job title, what your duties are, hours, etc.
Okay, I'm a CPFR analyst, and that stands for Collaborative Planning, Forecasting, and Replenishment Analyst.
Okay.
At the end of the day, I'm a retail analyst. I work for Stanley Black & Decker. I manage our quick set product for all Home Depot stores nationwide.
Okay.
I manage them from a forecasting internally, but I also manage our customer piece and logistics for getting our products to the customer.
Okay. What educational background is needed in order to perform this profession?
You need a strong background in math, because a lot of what we do involves numbers. It's a very detailed-oriented field, but mathematics is probably the biggest field. The other piece of that is customer relations and just general business. How to talk to customers, how to deal with customers. I'm not sure that there's one single field of study that covers all that. There's an experience factor there.
Okay. Okay. Do you speak Spanish in your job?
No, I do not, but I deal with several plants that we have in Mexico. So most of those are Spanish-speaking folks who happen to also speak English, but we have translators that work in California in our home office that do speak Spanish. So when we do meetings by phone, a lot of times my folks that I work with in California have to translate for me. So no, I do not, but it would be very useful to be able to.
Okay. Would the use of Spanish in your profession benefit you or your business?
Yes, and again, the reason being we have 2 key plants that are in Mexicali, which are in Mexico, and they're predominantly run and maintained and kept up by Mexican-speaking people. So even the plant managers there are bilingual, but they speak Spanish as a primary language. So yes, it would be very useful if I had it to be able to communicate directly with them instead of having to depend on an interpreter.
Okay. Do you distribute information about your profession in Spanish?
No.
Okay. If you spoke Spanish, if you speak Spanish, does the profession exist in a Spanish-speaking country? Would that be something you would ever consider? Why or why not?
It does exist. In fact, several of our key supply planners that I work hand in hand with are bilingual, and they do speak Spanish, and it's actually a requirement on their part.
Okay.
It's not a requirement on my part because I deal with an English-speaking customer that we deliver to, but working directly with our plants, you would almost have to be able to speak Spanish in order to be able to fill that role.
Okay. If your profession allowed a stipend for bilingual employees, would you be willing to learn Spanish and use it in your profession?
Yes, I would. And in fact, I learned French, but looking back now, if I had it to do over again, Spanish would have been my choice.
Okay. How much of a stipend would it have to be in order to pay your interest?
Ask again, I'm sorry.
Okay. How much of a stipend would it have to be in order to... I can't really... To pique your interest.
Let me read the question. Which number is it?
It's the last part of number 7.
How much of a stipend would it have to be in order to pique your interest? I already have a general interest in Spanish language anyway, so I'm not saying it would have to be a big thing. I have a general interest in Spanish just because of the growing Spanish-speaking population in our country. You know, not the least of which just in our area where we live. I just think it's a growing language in our culture and where we live, so it would be very useful whether I have to work in that environment or not.
Okay. Have you ever traveled outside the U.S.?
Yes, I have.
Where?
To South Africa.
Okay. Did you have any encounters in which it would have been beneficial to speak another language?
Absolutely, it would have been, yes. And most South Africans do speak English, or at least broken English. But yes, into the tribal areas where we went, to have been able to speak at least a basic tribal South African would have been very useful. Yes.
Okay. Okay, these are non-work related questions. In your opinion, what holds people back from learning another language?
It's intimidating. People go into it knowing it's going to take a lot of work, and they don't, especially folks my age, they look at it and say, well, I don't have the time to learn. So they think there's no way I could invest that much time. So I think that's one of the biggest barriers between people actually starting and learning a language, is they just feel like it's too much work and there's no way they could do it.
Okay. Did you take a foreign language in high school?
Yes.
What language?
French.
Okay. What do you remember from the class?
From my high school French, it was more book French. We did not speak enough in class to say that we were learning spoken French. We learned written French. If I had to read a sign in French, I could, make it out. But as far as communicating with someone who spoke French, probably not very useful. My high school experience in French.
Okay. If you had to go back and take the class again now, what do you think you would approach it differently? Yes,
I would.
How?
I would want to invest more time in speaking and listening and learning to listen in French. It's great to be able to write and read in French, but that's not very useful when you're applying it and using it. So, again, when I got to college and took French, it was a very overwhelming experience, because none of my professors in college spoke English. They spoke French from day one. And so it was very hard just to sit in class and learn, because I could read and write, but I couldn't listen to my teacher and understand. So if I went back, did it over again, I would absolutely insist that we spent more time in the classroom speaking and listening to each other in that language. It would have been helpful.
Okay, we're done.